The biting cold wind cut through the streets of Washington, D.C., wrapping the city in an unforgiving embrace. Snowflakes drifted gently from the sky, covering sidewalks and parked cars in a thick white blanket. It was the kind of night that made even the most resilient souls seek shelter indoors, huddled by fireplaces or wrapped in thick blankets with cups of steaming cocoa. But not everyone had that luxury. As Vice President JD Vance and his wife, Usha, stepped out of a diplomatic event, the warmth of the grand hall faded behind them, replaced by the sharp chill of reality. JD adjusted the collar of his thick woolen coat while Usha wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck. The streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional cab swishing past and the soft hum of streetlights flickering in the frosty air. Then, just as they reached their car, something caught Usha's eye, a bundle of rags huddled against the base of a street lamp. At first, it looked like a pile of discarded blankets, but then, a movement. A frail hand emerged from beneath the layers of worn-out fabric. Usha gasped and instinctively grabbed JD's arm. "JD, look," she whispered. JD turned and followed her gaze. There, curled up on the frozen pavement, was a woman, her face barely visible beneath a tattered hood. Her hands, red and raw from the cold, clutched at her threadbare coat. She was shivering uncontrollably. A small cardboard sign lay next to her, half buried in the snow, with shaky handwriting that read, "Please help. Anything will do." JD felt a pang in his chest. It was a sight he had seen before, back when he was a boy in Middletown, Ohio, growing up in a world where financial struggles were a daily reality. He knew what it was like to feel invisible, to hope for kindness from strangers while expecting none. Usha was already stepping forward before he could say anything. "Ma'am," she called gently, crouching beside the woman. "Are you okay?" The woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were pale blue, clouded with exhaustion and hunger. She struggled to sit up, her breath coming out in small, misty puffs. "I am fine," she croaked, though it was clear she wasn't. JD knelt beside his wife. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman hesitated, then murmured, "Mary." "Mary, how long have you been out here?" Usha pressed, concern deepening in her voice. Mary gave a weak shrug. "Too long." JD's jaw tightened. He could see the signs of severe exposure. Her fingers were dangerously pale, her lips tinged with blue. If she stayed out much longer, the consequences could be fatal. Usha glanced at JD and he knew exactly what she was thinking. They couldn't just walk away. Not tonight. Not ever. "Come with us," JD said firmly. "Let's get you somewhere warm." Mary's eyes widened with fear and hesitation. She had likely been ignored, or worse, mistreated by too many people to trust easily. I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be," Usha assured her. "We just want to help." JD reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Already dialing someone from his security team. "We'll get you a warm meal and a safe place to stay," he promised. As Mary hesitated, JD saw something flicker in her eyes. A mixture of disbelief and fragile hope. For the first time in a long while, someone had stopped for her. Someone cared. And that was only the beginning. JD Vance turned to one of his security officers standing nearby, a tall man in a dark coat with an earpiece barely visible under his hat. "Get the car warmed up," JD instructed. "She's coming with us." The agent nodded and rushed toward the black SUV idling by the curb. Meanwhile, Usha helped Mary to her feet. The homeless woman swayed unsteadily, her body weak from prolonged exposure. JD quickly stepped in, offering his arm for support. Mary hesitated before gripping it, her icy fingers trembling against the warmth of his glove. "You're sure about this?" she mumbled, her voice barely above the wind's whisper. Usha gave her a reassuring nod. "Absolutely." Carefully, they helped Mary into the back seat of the SUV. The warmth inside was immediate and she let out a breathy sigh, leaning back against the plush leather. JD instructed the driver, "Take us home." As the car pulled away from the curb, Mary's hands hovered over the air vents, soaking in the heat. Usha reached into her handbag and pulled out a pair of woolen gloves, gently placing them over Mary's frostbitten fingers. "These should help," she said. Mary looked at her, bewildered. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to say anything," JD replied. For a moment, silence filled the car, broken only by the faint hum of the engine. Then JD asked the question that had been weighing on his mind. "How did you end up out there, Mary?" Mary exhaled slowly, staring down at her hands. "Life," she said with a sad chuckle. "One bad turn after another." Usha gave her a gentle look. "Tell us. If you're comfortable." Mary hesitated, then nodded. "I wasn't always like this," she began. "I had a job, a home. I worked in a diner in Baltimore for years. Nothing fancy, but it paid the bills. Then COVID hit and everything changed. The diner shut down. I lost my job, my savings dried up, and before I knew it, I was out on the street. JD exchanged a glance with Usha. They had heard stories like this before, but hearing it firsthand from someone sitting inches away made it all the more real. I tried shelters, but they're full most nights, Mary continued. And when they're not, it's not always safe. She shuddered as if recalling a painful memory. I've been sleeping wherever I can, doorways, bus stops, anywhere that keeps me out of the wind. But this cold, she trailed off, hugging herself. I don't think I would have made it much longer. Usha reached over and placed a comforting hand on Mary's arm. You're safe now. Mary blinked back tears. Why are you doing this? She asked. JD didn't hesitate. Because I know what it's like to struggle, he said. To wonder if tomorrow is going to be any better. But I also know that sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to change everything. Mary let his words sink in. She had met people before who offered $1, a meal, or a passing kind word. But no one had ever done what they were doing now, giving her a second chance. As the SUV rolled through the quiet streets of Washington, Mary allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Little did she know, this night would be the start of something far greater than she could have ever imagined. As the SUV pulled up to the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory, Mary's eyes widened. She had no idea where they were taking her. But she certainly hadn't expected this. The tall iron gates opened smoothly, allowing the vehicle to roll into the beautifully landscaped estate. The soft glow of outdoor lights illuminated the grand home. And for a moment, Mary felt like she had been transported to a different world. JD turned to her with a small smile. It's just a house, Mary. What matters is that you're safe here. Mary swallowed hard. She wasn't used to kindness, at least, not the kind that went beyond a few dollars or a sympathetic look. As the car came to a stop, a staff member approached and opened the door for them. JD and Usha stepped out first, then turned back to help Mary, who hesitated. Maybe I shouldn't, she said. This is too much. I don't belong here. Usha shook her head firmly. You belong somewhere warm, safe, and surrounded by people who care. That's all that matters right now. After a moment of indecision, Mary slowly stepped out of the car. The cold night air was still sharp, but the promise of warmth inside was stronger. JD guided her up the front steps, and as they entered the house, Mary was immediately engulfed in comforting heat. The entryway was elegant yet welcoming, with a fireplace crackling in the distance and the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air. A woman in a staff uniform approached with a warm smile. Mr. Vice President, Mrs. Vance, she greeted. I've prepared the guest room as requested. Thank you. And, Usha said gratefully. She turned to Mary. Would you like to clean up first? A hot shower might help. Mary looked down at herself. Her clothes were tattered, her hands still bearing the grime of life on the streets. The thought of warm water washing away months of dirt and cold was almost too overwhelming to process. I'd love that, she whispered, and gently led her down the hall, and JD watched as Mary disappeared into one of the guest rooms. He let out a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She doesn't believe this is real, Usha murmured, stepping beside him. She will, JD said. We just have to show her. 45 minutes later, Mary emerged from the guest room looking like a different person. She was wearing a soft set of borrowed clothes, simple but warm, and her damp hair fell loosely over her shoulders. When she stepped into the dining room, she hesitated, her eyes flickering over the spread before her. A steaming bowl of soup, fresh bread, and a cup of tea sat waiting for her at the table. You cooked this? She asked, glancing between JD and Usha. Usha chuckled. Not exactly, but we made sure it was hot and ready for you. Mary sat down slowly as if afraid it would disappear the moment she touched it. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up the spoon and took a small sip of the soup. The warmth spread through her, and before she knew it, she was eating faster than she intended. She paused, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she mumbled. I haven't had a real meal in. I don't even remember. JD shook his head. You don't have to apologize, Mary. Eat as much as you want. For the next few minutes, she ate in silence, savoring every bite. When she finally set the spoon down, a deep sigh escaped her lips. That was the best meal I've had in years, she admitted. Usha smiled. There's more if you want. Mary shook her head, her expression shifting. You two have already done too much. I don't understand, why me? JD leaned forward, his gaze steady. Because no one should be left out in the cold, Mary. Not when we can do something about it. Mary's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from sadness. For the first time in years, she felt human again. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she had hope. Mary barely remembered the last time she had slept in a real bed. The warmth of the blankets, the softness of the mattress, it all felt like a dream. When she woke the next morning, for a moment, she feared she had imagined everything. But as she opened her eyes and saw the elegant guest room around her, reality settled in. She was safe. A gentle knock at the door startled her. Mary? It's Usha, came the soft voice from the other side. I brought you some breakfast. Mary hesitated before replying. Come in. Usha stepped inside, carrying a tray with toast, eggs, and a cup of coffee. The smell made Mary's stomach growl, and Usha smiled. Good morning, she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. Mary sat up slowly, running a hand through her hair. Morning, she murmured, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. Usha took a seat at the edge of the bed. I know this is a lot to take in, she said gently. But JD and I were talking last night, and we don't want this to be just a one-time act of kindness. We want to help you get back on your feet. Mary's breath caught in her throat. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Usha assured her. Just let us help. JD entered the room a moment later, holding a folded jacket in his hands. I was thinking, he said, handing it to her, if you're up for it, we could start by getting you some new clothes today. Something warm for the winter. Mary ran her fingers over the soft material of the jacket. I don't have any money, she admitted. We're not asking you for anything, JD said. This is about giving you a chance. Mary's eyes filled with emotion. I don't deserve this. JD frowned. Why would you say that? Mary let out a shaky breath. I've been out there so long, forgotten by everyone. It's hard to believe someone still cares. Usha reached for her hand. You're not forgotten, Mary. And you deserve a second chance as much as anyone. Tears welled in Mary's eyes, but this time they weren't from despair. They were from something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. A few hours later, Mary found herself walking through the doors of a department store, escorted by the vice president and his wife. The employees greeted JD and Usha with polite nods, but it was clear they were puzzled by Mary's presence. JD, as if sensing it, kept his voice steady. Mary is with us, he said, silencing any judgment before it could begin. Usha led Mary through the aisles, helping her pick out warm coats, sturdy boots, and comfortable sweaters. At first, Mary hesitated, but Usha gently encouraged her. Choose what you like, she said. This is for you. Mary slowly reached for a thick woolen sweater, feeling the softness beneath her fingers. For years, she had settled for whatever scraps she could find. Now, she was being given a choice. It was almost too much to process. As they stood at the checkout counter, Mary turned to JD and Usha. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, JD said. Just promise us one thing. Mary looked at him, curious. When you're back on your feet, JD continued, help someone else the way we're helping you. Mary swallowed hard, nodding. I will. JD smiled. Then that's all the thanks we need. As they stepped out of the store, Mary wrapped her new coat tightly around her. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was starting over. And she wasn't alone. The days that followed were unlike anything Mary had ever expected. JD and Usha had arranged for her to stay in a transitional housing program. A safe, clean place where she could rest, recover, and begin rebuilding her life. But they didn't just stop there. One morning, after a few days of settling in, JD and Usha visited her at the housing center. Mary greeted them with a smile, something she hadn't done in a long time. I was just about to go to my job interview, she said, adjusting the warm coat they had given her. JD's eyes lit up. That's amazing. What's the job? Mary took a deep breath. A hostess position at a small cafe downtown. It's nothing fancy, but it's a start, Usha finished with a smile. And that's all that matters. Mary nodded, gripping the strap of her borrowed handbag. I wouldn't have gotten this far without you both. JD chuckled. We just gave you a hand. The rest is all you. Mary hesitated before speaking again. Last night, I was thinking about what you said, JD. About helping someone else when I can. JD and Usha both leaned in, curious. I met a woman at the shelter, Mary continued. Her name is Carla. She's younger than me, maybe in her late 20s. She's been living on the streets for months, just like I was. Usha smiled softly. And you want to help her? Mary nodded. I don't have much, but I told her about this housing program, and I promised that if I got this job, I'd buy her a hot meal with my first paycheck. JD and Usha exchanged a glance. Their simple act of kindness had created something bigger. That's how it starts, JD said. One person helping another. And before you know it, kindness spreads. Mary took a deep breath, her confidence growing. I want to do for Carla what you did for me. If I can help even one person, maybe they'll help someone else. And maybe, she trailed off, looking down at her hands, maybe it won't feel so hopeless out there anymore. JD placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Mary, you're already making a difference. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. I should get going. I don't want to be late for my interview. Usha squeezed her hand. You've got this. As Mary walked away, JD watched her with quiet pride. She had been lost in the cold, forgotten by the world. But now, she was standing tall, ready to take back her life. Usha turned to JD. You think she'll make it? JD smiled. I know she will. As they left the shelter, JD thought about how something as simple as stopping to help one person could change everything. It reminded him of his own journey, how people had lifted him up when he needed it most. Now it was his turn to do the same. And if Mary's story was any proof, kindness had a way of coming full circle.